My eyes rolled back in my head, my arms went limp, and my heart stopped cold. A lot of stuff sounds the same, and it's not the medium, it's the message that's the weak part.
It should never be about tricking people. It should be about problem solving. And we do that by building relationships.
I pray you don't have to die to think like this, but to recognize that every breath we take is a gift, and we get to choose how we're going to use that gift.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wilson Zaire. Welcome to Direct Edge, where we explore the strategic thinking behind sustainable business growth. Today, I'm spending time with Bill Dolan, who's president and creative director of Spirit Media. Bill and I have known each other for a long time, but haven't talked recently. And really, we're exploring the power of media and storytelling and how all of those elements can be used for demand generation to help drive sustainable growth. So with that said, Bill, welcome to the show.
Gosh, Wilson, it's so good to see you. Great to be on the show and great to share with your guests. Obviously we had a pre-discussion a little bit in preparation for this. And, it's interesting, I think, for any business, for anybody out there who's communicating, whether it be through mail platforms or visual platforms or whatever it is, the power of meaningful content and relevant stories has never been greater. And I think that's the thing that's really exciting for the place that we're in together right now, especially with AI and other things coming to market that in some cases are creating easier ways to develop content, but also a lot of ways it's developing mediocre content. And so a lot of stuff sounds the same. And if you don't know the power of strategic content development, and you don't know the power of strategic brand storytelling, you end up mimicking bad recipes and then wondering why you don't get rid of the response rate. And it's not the medium, it's the message that's the weak part.
Right. No, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I had this discussion with somebody this morning because we were talking about AI, and AI, as we use it, does a lot of helpful things. I mean, we do use it in our business. We do, we use it in some places to help generate code, to help generate content, to do some writing. But at the same time, I did this program. I finished this program in data analytics, graduate program at Harvard University. And AI was just emerging, this version of AI, which of course is not like iRobot or what we traditionally think of as AI, was just emerging. So we spent a lot of time talking about it. And one of the interesting things is that this incarnation of AI tends to use data, large language model, and it percolates through the data and tries to extract truth from it. The problem is, as you say, everybody's using the same truth from the model. And if everybody's using the same truth, even though they're producing content that's specific to their business, it kind of looks the same, so over time, not immediately, but over a period of time, if people continue to do that, then everything starts to look the same and sound the same and act the same. And when we're looking at creativity and innovation, what we want to be is different, but in a way that matters, in a good way, right?
Oh, exactly. Back when I started my career early on, our agency does a lot of video storytelling for web, social media, and we produce a lot of events still. But at the heart of what we do is about the messaging side. And I go back to my days in television when I first started out. And we really had two approaches. So how are we going to make a message stick? And one is to make it unique and relevant and memorable, something that you looked at it and it stirred a response. In other words, it need to pass through the front cortex into the limbic system so that when you heard a message, read a message, saw a message, it impacted you, your emotions, versus the type of stuff that people would then pump out. We had what we call the 7-touch rule, which I actually call institutional nagging. It's not to say that the 7-touch rule does not have validity, but imagine doing something 7 times that actually has meaning rather than just being a reminder, but is actually relevant. And I think what you're saying is so true. When we can elevate our standards and recognize this, every business, and it doesn't matter what you do, if you're small business, big business, enterprise business, the distinction that makes you different and better than others and memorable is kind of what I call your fingerprint. It's like the fingerprint of God. You've been given this one fingerprint, and you can unlock things that no one else can unlock with that fingerprint. So when you're strategic about your communication, you're strategic about your brand story, and you weave that like a tapestry in all your touch points, you're able to open doors that no one else can open because you are uniquely relevant. And that's really the power of how we elevate beyond the AI, let's call it the red ocean, if you will, of content marketing.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, the other point that we talked about earlier is this idea that if we think about creativity and innovation, that process is one of creating an idea and evaluating it, and then creating another idea and evaluating it, creating another idea and evaluating. So it's an iterative process of trial and error. Somebody asked Edison one time, and I'll misstate this quote, but 1,000 times he tried to build a light bulb and couldn't. And somebody said, "Why do you keep doing that if you're not successful?" Because he said, "Because I've learned 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb." Right. And so much of success hinges on those failures, right? That's how we learn to get better. But if you just start out with everybody else's successes, which is what large language models tend to do, because the failures don't always get captured, then that learning just doesn't take place. And so the potential to miss out on opportunities or real or actual seminal discoveries is a lot less.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, let's face it, as much as AI and all those models have a wealth of knowledge, it's not infinite, it's not complete, and probably most important, it's not experiential. Because I really do think that great entrepreneurs don't just use recipes. Great entrepreneurs run on instincts. They run on gut. They run on a volume of millions of touch points that have been accumulated over their lifetime that help them make wise, informed decisions that you can't just plug into a program that hasn't had your experience. So the more that an entrepreneur recognizes that they actually have a gift that might be underutilized, it means that there's more opportunities yet to be discovered that they might not have even thought of.
Exactly. Well, and the the solutions that you choose or the path you choose have to be unique to the individual too. I mean, you have different strengths, gifts, and passions that you bring to the equation. And so if somebody's just giving you a generic solution that doesn't take advantage of those, it's likely not to be as successful as a solution set that does.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So you look at the opportunities right now out there are mind-blowing. But at the center of great marketing and great growth is the power of communication, the power of story, and the vehicles we use to continuously connect, engage, and develop real relationships.
No, I totally agree. So tell us about your journey, Bill. How did you get here? What attracted you to the industry? What's the journey been like for you?
Well, I've been in it for a long time, but the start was humble, like a lot of us. I grew up an only child, and actually got into television in large part because I had a really tough childhood. My dad was sick when I was little, and he was actually supposed to die. And he had a really hideous, painful disease that caused him to lash out. And there were seasons when he was both physically and verbally abusive. And which is what happens. Hurting people hurt other people, especially those within arm's reach. And I found refuge in my bedroom where I would watch TV. And I would immerse myself in old classic movies. I loved monster movies. I loved them. I'd watch them over and over. I'd get the TV guide. It was like my little Bible, actually. I'd get the TV guide and say, what movies are playing on this date? And that was my appointment schedule.
So I have to stop you there for a second, Bill, because I've done this in class. I've asked students, like, a TV guide, what is that? And the students are like, what? I said, believe it or not, there was a time when you have to see when things were playing and you had to schedule your calendar around what you wanted to watch. And they're like, oh, that's so weird.
It is. Really. And for those of us that grew up in television, what we want to do is create what we call appointment television.
Right.
Yeah, that's so good. You set an appointment because I'm going to watch Ed Sullivan at this time. I'm going to watch the Tonight Show, whatever. Yeah, no, I know it's got to be completely foreign, And by the way, and it came in the mail. You open it up. It came on Tuesday. It started Saturday. So I could tell you what my week was going to look like. But here's the thing that's so cool is what often would appear to be a very difficult and troubling times. I was being forced into learning the art of storytelling because I would watch story after story after story, and it removed me from the difficulty of my childhood and transported me into another world. So much so that by the time I got into high school, I was taking all the weird classes. I was taking, how to structure language and sentence structure and speech and more English classes and things like that. And I ended up going to college and studying television, not knowing exactly all I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be in television. It turned out I had a knack for being a director. So at age 20, between my sophomore and junior year, I got an internship, the ABC regional affiliate, and after 90 days, they hired me. And that launched my television career. And the thing that was amazing is that, as you know, in life, you can take all the classes you want, and in many cases, you learn how to learn, and you get context, at least ways to systematize what you're learning and where that belongs. But the most important thing was that I was immersed in the lab of life, of learning from great directors, great agencies, great producers. I worked with celebrities and world leaders, and it exposed me to so much. And during that time, I married my high school sweetheart. We ended up having 5 children. And I ended up leaving television quite abruptly, live television. And I don't know if you ever knew this, Wilson, but there was a point where, as a young father, trying to think, how do we make ends meet? And how do I do all these good things for my family? I was burning the candle at both ends and in the middle. Totally frying myself out. And one day I came into work after my twins were born, okay? And I was supposed to be on paternity leave, but they said, oh, you can't take paternity leave, that'll be hard. So I come back exhausted. And one day a writer just, middle of a live show, ticked me off, poked me in the chest to make a point, and I poked him back really, really hard. And when he threatened assault and battery, I got fired. So that's when I left the network and launched, our agency. And we've just been so blessed. A lot of what we do still, corporate communications, corporate marketing. How do you tell that story effectively? How do you tell it at a world-class level? And that opened up doors for me to start also directing with more in the entertainment space. And so I started working with bands like Gwen Stefani, the Black Eyed Peas, Maroon 5, Avril Lavigne. I could go down the list of different shows I directed over the years and working side by side with the President of the United States on a documentary project and different marketing projects. And just the world opened up and continued to explode for me and bless me until I realized kind of another failure. And it was interesting because it was exactly 7 years to the date that I got fired. I had an opportunity to produce a documentary project. And I thought, wow, this is going to change my life. Because anybody who's watching, if you're in business, every day you're having to manage your priorities. That includes not only pursuing your love, whether that's business or entrepreneurship, but also taking care of the loves of your life. And that's a balancing act that I've never seen anybody handle perfectly. And for me, I handled it poorly and was actually turning into an absentee father and husband because I was on the road being successful, like crazy successful. So when I had this documentary project, I thought this is going to be great because I can focus on one thing. It was very lucrative as well. And we had a distributor in Nashville that said, come here, we got a big check for you. And I thought, wow, my life is going to change. And it did, but not the way I expected. Because about 20 minutes on the flight to Nashville, I started to feel sick. And I really thought everything was closing in on me. And I turned to my friend who was with me. I said, Tim, there's something not right. That's the last thing I said. And my eyes rolled back in my head. My arms went limp and my heart stopped cold. And of course, Tim, dear friend, did not know CPR. Wasn't a doctor. All I knew was to do chest compressions and nothing happened. So he literally picked me up and put me in the aisle and started doing chest compressions. And um, after about 2, 3 minutes, he said he was about ready to break my ribs. And as he pulled his fist back, I took a breath. So we made an emergency landing. I now have a pacemaker. And I can say that when you start talking about business and life and communications, one, you really start thinking what's really important. What is really important? And on that last day, when you take your last breath, I'm probably not going to be asking for my Emmy nominations or my, awards or bring me my bank balance. I'm going to be around people I love. And I'm going to be thinking about the lives I impacted. And that is something I would encourage for anybody that I pray you don't have to die to think like this, but to recognize that every breath we take is a gift. And we get to choose how we're going to use that gift. And certainly part of that is, like I said, it's can you be there for the people that you love? Can you live your highest values? And can you use this business, the things you're doing, not just to make transactions, but actually to create transformation in the lives you get to serve? So that's where we are right now. It's probably a bigger answer than what you were expecting. But I would say from a philosophical and spiritual standpoint, me dying is one of the best things that's ever happened. I actually wish everybody could die and come back because it would change your life and would change how we do this beautiful thing called business.
Yeah, that's a powerful story. You were talking about storytelling. It actually gives new meaning to the name Spirit Media too, doesn't
Yeah.
it? So how has it changed? How has it changed your business and your life and your approach to customers and lead generation and or has it?
Well, it really has. I mean, it's interesting, and this kind of sounds bad, but as a young entrepreneur, I was kind of like a teenager on a date, where the prospect on the other side of the table was probably saying, "You're looking in the wrong place. Look in my eyes." And as sometimes as business people, we're busy looking at people's wallets. You know what I mean? And not looking in the eyes of that prospective client. And so part of it has to do with I'm looking in people's eyes more. And instead of thinking who can buy from me, I start thinking about who I am called to serve.
Hmm. Mhm.
And it changes the dimension a little bit. It means that there's a ton of people out there that I'm really not called to serve. It's not that they're bad or wrong or anything, but if I were to there's so many ways to make millions and millions of dollars. Making money is really not a very difficult thing to do in the world we live in, with the opportunities we have. But if we were to narrow that down, not just to who will buy from me, but who can I make a profound impact in their life, in their business, in their dreams, in their outcomes, it changes the game because it moves from what I call the ICP, or the ideal client profile, to something I teach in my master class called the PIM, and that's the profound impact market. Not just who will transact with you, but who will be transformed by you. And so when I think in those terms, that profound impact market, it gives me a new level of focus because I'm also operating in my calling, in that unique place that I can make an impact. So that's one thing that's enormous, enormous. And I think, like you mentioned before, Wilson, messaging changes. Instead of what can I say to get you to buy from me, it is what can I say to make sure that every touch point actually has a positive impact on you. That if I have a breath, if I've been given breath today, how can I use that breath to be a gift and not just a vehicle to take? So, what that means from a messaging standpoint means that I look at that profound impact market and I pay even more attention into what I call their 10-digit human address, which includes their wants, their interests, their needs, their objections, their fears, their frustrations, their deepest desires, the outcomes that they deeply want, the transformation that they hope to experience. So we really go pretty deep so that when I'm writing copy for them, and have to consider who we are. Obviously, they need to know what you do, how you do it, when you do it, how much it costs. I call it the features, the benefits, the benefits of the benefits, the proof points. What's the cost of not using you? What makes you unique? But that has to align the same way I would if I were writing a love letter. So instead of just being a Hallmark card, which all due respect to Hallmark, who can write generic copy to anybody. I mean, heck, we just, pick a holiday. Hallmark has something that says, "Hi, you're special. I love you. Hearts, roses, bye bye." Look, people can read through that. But when you speak with relevance and that uniqueness to that person, you're not writing copy, you're writing a love letter. And when your message can be transformed from sales copy to a love letter, it goes deeper. It's memorable. It's meaningful. It's relevant. And that has changed how we do business, because we don't just have clients, we actually form relationships.
Right. I mean, this goes back to something I talk about in classes too. We talk about, in entrepreneurship, we talk about the importance of sales, and it's really strange in a university environment because most universities don't really talk about sales,
Yeah.
and I think the problem is that we don't have the same kind of academic literature built around it. And a lot of people visualize it as, somebody in a Madras plaid coat trying to sell you a used car.
Yeah.
But enterprise sales are anything but that. I mean, and so, first of all, for entrepreneurs, you need to understand that if you can't sell stuff, everybody else can go home. I mean, I don't care how cool your widget is. If somebody doesn't buy it, then you're not going to survive. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's true with nonprofits too. If somebody doesn't, embrace your cause, you're stuck, right? And then secondly, it should never be about tricking people. It should be about problem solving. And we do that by building relationships. We build relationships and we try to understand the other person's problems. What are the challenges that they're dealing with, what it would take to make them successful or more successful, and how our products or services could do that. And sometimes the answer is, I can't. I'm not the right solution. And in that case, we can help them find the right solution. But in cases where we do fit, we can help them be more successful. And once we start looking at it more like problem solving and helping others be more successful, the whole thing seems to go a whole lot easier. We're not trying to trick people. We're not telling stories. We're not trying to remember what we said to the last person. We're just building relationships and trying to help people be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. When I think about not only that approach to what sales really is, and I think the root word behind sales actually is service. And it really, to be effective in sales is to be thoughtful about how can I serve you. And you're right. That plaid suit, whatever thing is, this is stereotypical, and it's led, unfortunately, to, I think the percentage is well over 50%, even approaching 16, 70% of people who have a distrust of people in sales. And unfortunately, it's been bad salespeople that has created that culture. Selfish people that are only interested in the transaction, ringing the bell, scoring the card, and taking home the bonus. While there's a certain level of gamesmanship and fun that can happen in the sales world, when it is done at the expense of not only the people that you serve, but potentially the industry, that's been a problem. And I can only hope, because I haven't taken a sales class at a college, but I can only imagine that there is not the level of resources and experience that you bring that you could say, look, this is how the real world works. This isn't just some recipe from 1920s. This is actually a relationship for the ages.
Well, it's interesting because I've taught, I don't know how many universities now, a bunch of universities, business, entrepreneurship, marketing, and almost none of them have a class in sales because it's not a profession, it's not professional, and it doesn't have the same body of knowledge around it. But marketing's okay and advertising's okay, but somehow sales is different. And I can tell you that, that in the technology industry, quite often the top salesperson in the company is making more money than the CEO because that job is really important. And having happy customers is really important.
Yeah.
So, but it's really easy to trivialize it, especially when, sales comes in all different, and I'm not trying to sell sales. I'm not saying that that's a job everyone should have, but it comes in all different forms too. I mean, the cashier at Safeway, when she or he says, "Did you find everything you were looking for today?" That's sales, right? And so it comes in all shapes and sizes. But when you're dealing with a complex enterprise with multiple decision makers and budgets and boards and things, I mean, it can be a very complicated process. And it takes some real skill to navigate those waters, especially when your competitors would like to do the same.
Well, yeah, and even though you mentioned the idea of the sales leader probably making as much or more than some CEOs. Truth is that the best CEOs are also in sales.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Every day is sales day. If you're a CEO, and I say again, reminding ourselves that sales is about service. And when you think about serving, a CEO has to be able to effectively sell or service the employee base, to believe and to act and to align around a mission, shared values, a shared opportunity. They have to be able to sell and serve their shareholders. around the vision for the company, the financials, and the operational plans that are going to take this company forward. They have to sell and serve their partners and their vendors. If A lot of entrepreneurs love to lift up, Steve Jobs as being this, wonder boy, technology guy, and certainly there's a lot of incredible attributes to Steve Jobs, but one that he was truly a master at was sales.
Selling a vision. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
excellent. Well, and you reminded me of something, conversation I've had many times over the years too, especially with startups. I always tell people everyone is in sales. Our job is to make the customer successful, and everybody owns a piece of that. Just because you're a software engineer doesn't mean you're not in sales.
Exactly.
If I put you on a phone with a customer, we need to come up with a solution.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I think it's funny. It's a conversation I had not long ago with my team about both sales and marketing, that each one of us are the living embodiment of our brand expressed through every touch point. It's one of our things. Obviously, we do creative agency, we're marketing. And so we say every touch point will build or undermine your brand. Well, every touch point has to do with everybody. There is nobody who gets to hide under the table during a work day or after work thinking, I have not touched the product. Because the truth is, you have, directly or indirectly, you've touched the product, which means you've touched the client, which means you've touched the brand, which means you've touched your community and the overall well-being of the organization. So if we can embrace that and really realize that, it elevates all of our game and it elevates our roles. And it's also why when we talk about business and leadership, that we can't look at anybody as being lower because they don't have a certain title. That every single human being in your organization is worthy to be respected and honored. And it's not about income, it is about who they are as human beings. And I think the more that we treat people with that level of respect, that they can actually embrace that responsibility, even embrace that crazy title of sales.
No, I agree. So to pivot slightly, I mean, we're talking about sales, but a lot of times in many organizations, sales is the precursor to sales is lead generation, which is advertising, marketing, and the kinds of things we do. Tell me about that. You have a business to build. What do you do to do lead generation and build demand and try to make your business successful?
Well, I follow a philosophy that I encourage everybody to do, because ultimately, if they come to a marketing agency like us, it's because they do want to grow. They do need to get their message out. And I always start out with thinking of this philosophy: show up. Show up. There's no time to be invisible, and you will not only grow an organization, but you'll completely lose the opportunity to have an impact on another life when you don't show up. So this crosses boundaries from personal to business to spiritual. Show up and be faithful to show up. And I will also say, as a quick side note on this, after having written the book, The 7 Disciplines of Relationship Marketing, I make a point of saying out of the gate, relationships are hard.
Mhm.
All relationships are hard.
Of course
It
there are.
doesn't matter. I mean, there's times early on we go, oh, it's magic and roses and wonder, but every relationship is hard because it takes time, it takes energy, it takes insight, and it will press you to grow. And that happens in a personal, but it happens in a business relationship. And so part of that business relationship then is, after showing up, is deciding what is the path to the ultimate outcome. In our case, I use a model that helps guide the whole lead generation and that intersection, because it can be soft between marketing and sales. If you're a small organization, sometimes your marketing person has to close a sale. Sometimes you're a small organization, it's your sales guy that has to do the marketing, okay? Because they can overlap. But I always go back to, again, after my death, I can get a little spiritual. So no offense to anybody that doesn't like this example, but I like to think that one of the greatest marketers in all time was Jesus. And I say this respectfully because he not only marketed, he showed us a map of how to create a movement. And he used a model he called, I'm going to teach my people how to be, my sales team, how to be fishers of men. So what does that look like in terms of lead generation? Well, very classic. You have to be cognizant about what you're fishing for. If you don't know what you're fishing for, that's the first problem. So know what you're fishing for. Now, we talked about ideal client profile or that profound impact market, but know what you're fishing for. From there, you have to know, where am I going to fish? Where am I going to find them? And so we're very deliberate about thinking about the pool of where we're going to attract that audience. And then from there, it's going to be, how do I show up? In other words, how do I create a hook? In some case business models, you have a net, direct to consumer, and we're trying to do large scale. When I was in television, we were throwing out a net. Some people call it mud against the wall, but it's a net. And it doesn't mean you're going to catch fish. It also means you're going to catch some things you didn't intend to catch. But there's that approach to it. But once you understand what that hook is, and that is, today in a very crowded market, you need to be seen, to be noticed. So you have to decide out of the gate, what is going to be the vehicle I use to get noticed? And the next is, where am I going to do that? In the case of B2B marketing, there's obviously social, there's email marketing, there's snail mail marketing, there's obviously a lot of stuff that we do. In fact, we're doing a lot of things with mailers and videos in the mailers. I mean, So there's tons of opportunities out of the gate, but it follows this path. Once you have the hook, they have to be educated. Learning should lead to understanding. Understanding is the point at which they go, yes, you're what I need, or you're not what I need. So you get dismissed. Understanding leads to embracing. Embracing leads to buy-in. Buy-in leads to action. Action leads to getting in the boat. And so we look at all the tools necessary to facilitate that journey in terms of tools and touch points. But getting them in the boat is not the ultimate journey. Because what we learn from people who do movements, of which there's been others in history, their goal wasn't just to get them in the boat. Movements, if you really want a movement, it's not a catch and keep model, it's a catch and release model. So the desire is always to turn every touch point into an ambassador. Because when you have an ambassador, you immediately shortcut that process and move the next generation immediately to embrace, because an ambassador told them. And that's the flywheel that we try to create, both in lead generation, but also creating a really sustainable, movement-driven type of marketing system.
Yeah, that's really cool. I remember watching a video, I don't know, a couple of years ago now, and was talking about it was talking about the importance of not just the innovator or the leader, but it talked about the importance of the first follower.
Oh, yes. I read that. So good.
Right. And because the first follower attracts more follower, and that's how a movement begins.
And the courage of the second follower. It's like, oh, yeah, it really is. And the thing is I mean, we think about sales and marketing, stuff like that. At the heart is the human experience. There's so much depth in psychology and the human experience. And when you combine that with a business model where the math adds up, magic happens.
Really. Yeah, I was thinking about your who should we talk to, or where should I fish? I mean, in direct mail, and of course, Mail, the company I run, does a lot of work with mail. And we have this formula we use that it's 70, 20, 10. So 70% is the list, 20% is the offer, 10% or whatever's left is creative, which is interesting because a lot of times we focus on the creative, but what we do know from experience is that if we put the right offer in front of the right person, good things happen. So much of it is just figuring out what problem we're trying to solve, what that solution looks like, and who we should be talking to. And if we
Mhm.
can do that, and if we're solving the right problem for the right people, then the rest of it's just, it's pretty easy going. I mean, you have to show up and you have to put in effort, but all of a sudden it becomes, more systematic.
That's a brilliant model. Well put. I'm writing that down. I'm sharing that with my team because we talk about those things all the time, and we're running a campaign right now, and that very issue of that list. The more you can get definition around that right list, I mean, obviously, we feel like we're writing great creative, and every day we're refining the offer to make sure that it's the right fit. It's like, making sure if you're running a restaurant, which items sell, what do they want to buy, what, do they say, oh, I really love this or not. But man, if you don't have that right list, forget it. You're just basically having home cooking and eating your own
Well,
creative.
right. Well, it becomes really important with mail too, because unlike some other kinds of digital media, it has a cost, right? I mean, the postage stamp costs money, the envelope costs money. It's physical, so it has a cost. So we really need to make sure that we're touching people
Mhm.
that have the need for that solution and can respond to it. And that starts with targeting. Targeting turns out to be really important. Um, but if we're trying to boil the ocean, it's just just talk to anybody who'll listen, it becomes really difficult to do that.
And tragically, I think we've seen a few people who've tried to do that, and you can always tell because they're beat down and exhausted.
Exactly. Well, I think we're running. We're coming up to the hour here, Bill, and I know you've got other stuff to do too. So I wanted to. Do you have a copy of your book? Could you show us that?
The 7 Disciplines of Relationship Marketing, available on Amazon,
Nice.
print, Kindle, and Audible, where I read it myself. And I can tell you secretly, we've got reports it has made some people their first million, and it's actually led to some people making billions. We have one of our clients who went through our system that's in the middle of a multi-billion-dollar merger. And look, it's the stuff you and I have talked about. This isn't rocket science. At the heart of this, and at the heart of my book, is what I talked about. It's a simple process, but like nitroglycerin, when you do it in the right proportions in the right order, magic happens. You do things in the wrong proportions in the wrong order, it's frustration. So having a recipe and having a system that has worked, is reliable and timeless, but also it's meaningful. You
No,
know,
and it also strikes me. It comes back to your message about just showing up. I've written a lot of stuff too, but I've never written a book.
Mhm.
Although I've tried pieces of a book, and it's a lot of work to do it and put it together. And you've got to have an idea, you've got to stick with it, you have to have the fortitude, and you have to just show up. So congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll when we get together, hopefully in the not too distant future, I'm working actually on my second book. Because once you write one book, I hate to say it, it's kind of like getting a tattoo. You start thinking, that butterfly was really nice on my ankle, but I think I can do better. So, so the next book takes this, and the idea is to go deeper because I don't want people ultimately when you really think about even our own life and our businesses, it's not just a recipe for how to behave. But the beauty of this process is following a master class on who we can become in the process. And when we take that a little bit deeper, it takes all the stuff that we do and it adds meaning, and it goes from fun to fulfillment. And ultimately, none of us are going to live forever. But when we can do things that make a difference and last, it's way better.
Sure. Well, we may not live forever in physical form, but our ideas can last, and the impact of our behaviors can last. And
Exactly.
that could be powerful for sure.
Hmm.
Um, well, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it. And if listeners have questions or want to engage through Spirit Media, how do they find you?
It's bill@spiritmedia.com. So if someone has a question, wants to engage, I'm more than happy to help and be available. Look, if you're a friend of Wilson's, you're a friend of mine.
Thank you, Bill. That's nice. I think we, obviously, Mail has a platform that automates mail. We do a lot of work with direct mail marketing, but I also teach marketing entrepreneurship and work with a lot of entrepreneurs. Happy to provide advice too. We've got a big 800 number on our site, and we always answer the phone. And if we're not the right solution, or even if you want to just talk about random ideas, we're happy to do that anytime. We love to talk to other entrepreneurs and marketers and people who want to be successful. And it feels like you share that spirit too. Well, so for our listeners, thank you for joining us on The Direct Edge. Remember, sustainable competitive advantage comes from building strategies that leverage your core competencies. This is our closing message. Identify what makes your organization offerings unique and valuable, and then embrace them as core when operating and planning for the future. We'll be back with another conversation to turn strategic thinking into competitive advantage in our next episode. Until then, keep learning, innovating, and growing. And I just chuckled a little bit because we have to have this for continuity, but so much of this has just been conversational and illuminating that it's at some level I hate ending it that way, but we need to do that for the marketing folks.
Hey, and it's great for the search engines.
Exactly. Well, Bill, thank you so much.
Thanks, Wilson.